The story of Jesus' betrayal from prison to crucifixion and death is one of the most well-known and debated narratives of all time. Many believe that these events were simply the result of a series of political betrayals and religious or a conspiracy orchestrated by the Jewish and Roman leaders of the time. However, the real reason behind these events transcends simple politics and goes beyond human betrayals. It is rooted in a divine design that changed the course of history, what motivated Judas to betray his master, why the religious authorities were so determined to silence him, and what was the true meaning of Jesus' suffering and death on the cross. Get ready to discover what the Bible has to say about these issues. I already ask for a like, and let's go to the video. It all begins in Bethany, a quiet village located about 3 kilometers from Jerusalem, which served as a special refuge for Jesus during his ministry. Located on the slopes of the Mount of Olives, this small community played a significant role in biblical history. It is here that we meet Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, 3 brothers and sisters whose home became a place of welcome and rest for Jesus. The importance of Bethany in the life of Jesus cannot be underestimated. It was a place of rest after days of preaching and miracles in Jerusalem. In addition to Bethany being mentioned at several crucial moments in the Gospels, emphasizing its relevance, it is in this serene environment that Jesus performed some of these most impressive miracles, demonstrating the divine power of God in a tangible way. Mary, Martha, and Lazarus were a family that enjoyed an intimate relationship with Jesus. Mary, known for her devotion and contemplation. Martha, always concerned with household chores, and Lazarus, whose resurrection is one of Jesus' most powerful miracles, are central figures in this story. He personifies different aspects of faith and human interaction with the divine. Jesus' relationship with this family is highlighted in several passages in the Bible. One of the best known is found in the Gospel of John, where a sick man reads, "Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha." John 11:12. This verse introduces us to the drama that will unfold around the illness, death, and resurrection of Lazarus. A powerful testimony to the divinity of Jesus. As we delve deeper into the lives of these characters, we realize how each of them contributed uniquely to Jesus' ministry. Mary with her spiritual devotion, Martha with her practical hospitality, and Lazarus with his experience of life and death offer us valuable lessons about faith and service. Jesus' interactions with each of them reflect his deep understanding of human needs and frailties. When Jesus first arrived in Bethany, he was warmly welcomed. Welcomed by Mary and Martha, their sister's home became a place of meeting and teaching, a refuge where Jesus could share his messages of hope and faith. Rich in learning and reflection, Martha, always diligent, was concerned with preparations and household chores. She wanted to ensure that everything was perfect for Jesus' stay, symbolizing for service and hospitality. Mary chose to sit at Jesus' feet, listening attentively to every word. This attitude demonstrated her spiritual purpose and her priority of learning directly from the Master. The Gospel of Luke offers us a glimpse of this encounter. While Jesus was on his way with his disciples, he entered a village. A woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who sat at Jesus' feet and listened to his word. Luke 10:38-39. This passage highlights the difference in priority between the two sisters and sets the stage for a profound teaching from Jesus. When Martha, overwhelmed with tasks, asked Jesus to instruct Mary to help him, Jesus responded with a lesson that still resonates today. He said, "Martha, Martha, you worry and are concerned about many things, but only one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen that good part which will not be taken away from her." Luke 10:41-42. This response not only exalted the choice of Mary, but also reminded everyone of the importance of the spiritual life in relation to daily concerns. This interaction between Jesus, Mary, and Martha offers us a valuable reflection on our own priorities in the modern world. It is easy to be consumed by daily demands and forget what is truly essential. Jesus invites us to find a balance, to value moments of silence and spiritual learning as much as our duties and responsibilities. With this lesson in mind, we move towards an even more significant moment in the life of this family, the illness of Lazarus. The news of Lazarus' illness led to a series of events that culminated in one of Jesus' most impressive miracles. The tranquility of Bethany was disturbed by the news that Lazarus was seriously ill. Mary and Martha, in desperation, sent an urgent message to Jesus informing him of the condition of their brother's Lord. "The one you love is sick." John 113. These words revealed not only the seriousness of the situation but also the deep trust they had in Jesus. Knowing that he could intervene in a miraculous way upon receiving the message, Jesus reacted in an amazing way. Instead of leaving immediately for Bethany, he remained where he was for more 2 days. This delay seemed inexplicable at first, but Jesus had a bigger vision in mind. He told his disciples that this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God might be glorified through it. John 1:14. By doing so, Jesus was setting the stage for an even more powerful demonstration of his divine power. Jesus' initial reaction to the news of Lazarus' illness may seem disconcerting, especially to Mary and Martha, who expected an immediate response. However, this decision underscores one of the central themes of the biblical story: sovereignty and God's perfect timing. Even in the face of anguish and waiting, the faith of the sisters remained intact, a testament to their unwavering trust in Jesus. As Lazarus' situation worsened, Mary and Martha's waiting and hope, they also knew that Jesus could heal their brothers, but they were about to discover that he had even greater plans. The prolonged wait served to intensify the revelation of Jesus' power, demonstrating that even in the most desperate situations, he is in control. This phase of the story teaches us patience and trust in God, even when his actions do not immediately match our expectations. Mary and Martha's faith was tested, but they remained steadfast, believing that Jesus had a greater plan. Their trust is an inspiring example for us all, reminding us that God works in mysterious ways, but always for the good of those who love him. When Jesus finally decided to go to Bethany, his disciples were perplexed. The delay of days seemed to contradict the urgency of the situation, but Jesus had a clear objective. He told his disciples, "Let's go back to Judea." They worried about Jesus' safety, replied, "Rabbi, the Jews had been trying to stone you very recently, and you go back there." John 11:78. Jesus' response revealed his confidence and his mission. There are not 12 hours of daylight. If someone walks during the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. John 1:19. Jesus knew that God's timing was perfect and that God's glorification would be manifested through the events to come. The delay was not negligence, but an opportunity for an even greater miracle that would strengthen the faith of the disciples and those who would witness the power of God. He explained, "Lazarus died, and for your sake, so that you may believe. I am glad I am not there, but let's go to him." John 11:14-15. Jesus' plan to wait before going to Bethany had a specific purpose: to demonstrate God's glory in a way that a healing, the immediate response, could not have been made. He was preparing the hearts and minds of the people for a miracle that would be an undeniable testimony to his divinity and power. This moment was not just about the resurrection of Lazarus, but about revealing the depth of God's love and sovereignty as he came to Bethany. Jesus was aware of the challenge Lazarus faced, but he also knew that Mary and Martha's faith would be rewarded in an extraordinary way. He told his disciples, "Our friend Lazarus is sleeping, but I go to wake him up." John 11:11. This metaphor of sleep indicated that Lazarus' death was not the end, but an opportunity for God's power to be manifested. Jesus' decision to wait reinforces the message that in times of waiting and uncertainty, we must trust that God's divine plan works in his own time and in ways that we often do not understand. Immediately upon his arrival in Bethany, Jesus was immediately confronted with the pain and sorrow that surrounded Mary's home, and Martha's friends and neighbors gathered to comfort the sisters, creating an atmosphere of mourning and despair. When Martha learned that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, clearly expressing her anguish and her hope. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." John 11:21. Jesus' response to Martha was an affirmation of faith and a promise her brother will be resurrected. John 11:23. Martha, still not fully understanding the meaning of Jesus' words, responded that she knew he would be resurrected on the last day. During the resurrection, Jesus then declared one of the most powerful statements in the Bible: "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies." John 11:25. This statement brought a new understanding to Martha and everyone present. Jesus spoke not only of a future resurrection, but of a present and immediate power. He affirmed his authority over life and death, demonstrating that faith in God can transform any situation, no matter how desperate it may seem. When Martha returned looking for Mary, Jesus remained outside the village waiting. When Mary arrived to meet Jesus accompanied by the comforters, she also expressed her sadness. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." John 11:32. Seeing the pain of Mary and those who accompanied him, Jesus was deeply moved. His empathy and compassion were evident, reflecting the true nature of his ministry. Jesus asked where they had laid Lazarus, and as he was taken to the tomb, he wept. The passage Jesus wept, John 11 verse 35, is one of the shortest and most powerful in the Bible, showing the humanity and empathy of Jesus. He felt the pain of the sisters and those around him, demonstrating that God is present in our moments of greatest suffering. Those present seeing Jesus weeping as if he were on earth, see how he loved her. John 11 verse 36. This is the weapon. It was a demonstration of the sincere love he had for Lazarus and all those who were suffering. This moment highlights Jesus' ability to feel and express human emotions, showing that he was not distant from the suffering of people, but deeply involved and present. Jesus' compassion teaches us a valuable lesson about empathy and solidarity. He shows us that it is important to feel and express our emotions and to be there for others in their moments of pain. The Bible tells us that God is with us in our afflictions, and Jesus' tears are proof that he not only heals and raises us up, but also comforts and shares our emotional burdens. As Jesus prepared to perform the miracle, he asked for the stone sealing the tomb to be removed. Martha, still struggling with the reality of her brother's death, expressed her concern about the state of Lazarus' body after 4 days. Jesus replied, "I told you not that if you believe you will see the glory of God." John 11 verse 40. This statement reinforced the need for faith even in the most distressing situations. With the stone removed, Jesus stood in front of Lazarus' tomb. The atmosphere was charged with expectation and tension. Jesus raised his eyes to heaven and prayed, "Father, I thank you for what you heard from me. I knew well that you always hear me, but I speak for the sake of the crowd that surrounds me, so that they may believe that it was you who sent me." John 11:41-42. This prayer was not just a request, but a declaration of faith and a demonstration of the intimate relationship between Jesus and God. After the prayer, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." John 11:43. This direct and powerful command cut through the silence and resounded in the cave where Lazarus was buried. The expectation among those present was palpable, and then something extraordinary happened. Lazarus, who had been dead for 4 days, came out of the tomb still wrapped in sheets. The miracle of the resurrection was complete and undeniable. The reaction of those present was of shock and joy. Many of those who had come to comfort Mary and Martha were now participating in one of the greatest miracles performed by Jesus. The resurrection of Lazarus was a powerful testimony to the authority of Jesus over life and death. This event not only renewed the faith of those who witnessed it, but also served as indisputable proof of the divinity of Jesus. Jesus then said, "Untie him and let him go." John 11 verse 40. For this command completed the miracle, allowing Lazarus to be freed from the bonds of death and returned to full life. The joy and celebration that followed were immense. The faith of Mary and Martha was rewarded in ways she could never have imagined. The power of God was manifested in a glorious and public way, reinforcing the belief in Jesus as the Messiah. This miracle also had significant repercussions for the ministry of Jesus. Many of the Jews who had come to see Mary and Martha and who had witnessed the miracles believed in Jesus. The raising of Lazarus not only brought new life to the brothers of the sisters, but also revitalized the faith of many others. It was a tangible demonstration that Jesus was truly the Son of God, having power over death and life. However, the miracle also had significant repercussions among the religious leaders. Upon learning of the resurrection of Lazarus, many of them gathered together and said, "What are we doing? Because this man performed many miracles." John 11 verse 47. The fear of losing their authority and influence over the people led them to intensify their plans against Jesus. This miracle, instead of leading them to Faith made them see Jesus as an even greater threat. Religious leaders concerned about the growing number of Jesus followers decided that drastic measures were needed. Caiaphas, the high priest, that year suggested that it was better that one man should die for the people than that the whole nation should perish. John 11:50. This decision marked the beginning of conspiracies that would lead to the arrest and crucifixion of Jesus, showing how an act of life and resurrection could triggering events that would culminate in the death of Jesus. During this time, the Bethany family experienced a renewal of their faith and friendship with Jesus. The raising of Lazarus not only brought his brothers back to life, but also strengthened the bond between them and Jesus. This miracle showed everyone that death did not have the last word. When Jesus was present, he was and continues to be the hope of eternal life for all who believe. The impact of the miracle extended beyond the walls of Bethany, echoing throughout the region and beyond. The news of the raising of Lazarus spread quickly, drawing more people to meet Jesus and hear his message. The faith of those who already believed was strengthened, and many new believers were added to the community of Jesus' disciples. This event was tangible proof of the power of God and the truth of Jesus' promises. After the raising of Lazarus, the friendship between Jesus and the Bethany family grew even stronger. This extraordinary miracle not only brought Lazarus back to life, but also cemented Mary and Martha's faith and trust in Jesus. They had already known Jesus as a close friend, but now they knew him as the Lord of life and death, someone who had practically demonstrated the power and love of God. The renewal of this friendship is a powerful testimony to the depth of God-centered human relationships. The home of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus continued to be a refuge for Jesus, a place where he could rest and find comfort. This special friendship is an example of how faith and God's love can transform and enrich our lives in profound and lasting ways. As Jesus' ministry continued to progress, his actions and teachings began to attract a growing number of followers, which intensified concern among religious leaders. Their main concern was that if Jesus continued to gain popularity, it could trigger intervention by the Roman authorities, resulting in the loss of their position and religious autonomy. From that point on, the religious leaders began actively planning the arrest and death of Jesus. They knew they could not arrest Jesus publicly without provoking an uprising because of his popularity with the people. The Caiaphas high priest proposed a radical and pragmatic solution. He and the other priests looked for a way to capture Jesus discreetly. Judas Iscariot, one of Jesus' 12 disciples, became the centerpiece of this plan. He went to the chief priests and agreed to hand Jesus over in exchange for 30 pieces of silver. Matthew 26 verses 14 to 16. Judas Iscariot's motivation for betraying Jesus has been a subject of intense debate and speculation over the centuries. According to the Gospels, Judas was one of the 12 disciples chosen by Jesus to be in charge of the group's common purse, which suggests he was in a position of trust. However, his betrayal surprised everyone, raising questions about what led him to make such a drastic and devastating decision. Of the suggested motivations, greed is one of them. The Gospel of Matthew reports that Judas accepted 30 pieces of silver from the religious leaders in exchange for handing over Jesus. This act may indicate that Judas was seduced by the promise of a financial reward, placing his own self-interest above his loyalty to his master. Scripture also indicates that he had already shown signs of corruption, such as when he criticized Mary for overwhelming Jesus with expensive perfume, suggesting that the money would be better spent giving it to the poor rather than actually stealing it for himself. Another possible motivation is desperation and disappointment. Judas may have been disillusioned with the kind of Messiah Jesus ended up expecting, a political leader who would free Israel from Roman rule. Judas may have been frustrated when he realized that Jesus spoke of a kingdom, believing that handing Jesus over to the authorities would force a confrontation where Jesus would be forced to manifest his power in a more obvious and politically revolutionary way. There is also the spiritual perspective where Judas' betrayal is seen as a predestined part of God's plan for the redemption of humanity. The Gospels mention that Satan entered Judas, suggesting that he was influenced by evil forces. This does not absolve Judas of responsibility, but it does place his betrayal in the context of a larger conflict between good and evil, as Judas saw himself as a necessary instrument to carry out Jesus' sacrifice, a shadowy but crucial role in the salvation narrative during this period. Jesus continued his ministry aware of the conspiracies against him. He returned to Jerusalem where he was greeted with acclaim during his triumphal entry, an event that further strengthened the determination of the religious leaders to arrest him. As Jesus prepared his disciples for the events ahead, in particular the final scene in which he instituted the Eucharist and revealed that one of them would betray him on the night of the final scene. After Judas had left to carry out his betrayal, Jesus went with his disciples to the Garden of Gethsemane, where he prayed intensely, aware of the impending suffering he would face. It was in this garden that Judas arrived accompanied by a mob armed with sword and staff sent by the chief priests and elders. Judah identified Jesus with a kiss, a signal arranged to indicate to the guards that he had to arrest him. Matthew 26 verse 47-49. Jesus was arrested and taken first to Anna's father-in-law and then to the home of Caiaphas, where he faced charges of blasphemy. During the night, he was taken before the Sanhedrin where he was interrogated and condemned to death. The next morning Jesus was handed over to Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, so that the death sentence could be confirmed and carried out. This meticulous plan and the betrayal of Judas culminated in the crucifixion of Jesus, a central event in the history of salvation. The arrest and successive trials of Jesus were characterized by lawlessness and injustice, but fulfilled the divine design of redemption. The resurrection of Lazarus, a prelude to Jesus' own resurrection, set in motion a series of events that led to the consummation of Christ's sacrifice on the cross. The death and resurrection of Lazarus and all subsequent events were carefully orchestrated as part of God's divine plans. The miracle of Lazarus was not just an isolated act of compassion, but a central piece in the grand mosaic of redemption that God was weaving by bringing Lazarus back to life. Jesus not only demonstrated his power over death, but also foreshadowed his own resurrection, an event that would redefine the relationship between God and humanity forever. This miraculous act served to strengthen the faith of his disciples and prepare their hearts for the tumultuous events that were to come. Religious leaders concerned about Jesus' growing popularity saw the miracle of Lazarus as a direct threat to their authority and political stability, but their conspiracies and ultimate decision to arrest and crucify Jesus unwittingly fulfilled God's sovereign will. Jesus' death on the cross, followed by his resurrection, was the culmination of God's plan of salvation. Prophesied throughout the centuries, this supreme sacrifice not only redeemed humanity from sin but also established a new covenant between God and his people based on grace and faith. The events that unfolded after the resurrection of Lazarus also teach us important lessons about patience, trust, and the sovereignty of God. We often do not understand why there are delays or difficulties in our lives, but the story of Lazarus reminds us that God acts in his time and in ways that are often incomprehensible to us. Serves reassures us that whatever the circumstances, his plans for us are always for our good and for his glory. May we learn from these stories to strengthen our faith, to seek God in all circumstances, and live with the sure hope that in Christ we have the promise of eternal life. In the next video, discover why and how Joseph was sold by his brothers and how this betrayal forever changed the course of Israel's history. Just click on the video that will appear on the screen to continue following us. Thank you for watching. See you soon, and may God bless you.